around the world. People don't change that much. I think they recognize those people whose commitment has been.
Something was discovered inside the palace that nobody was meant to find. Princess Anne found it anyway, and Camilla's son has not recovered since. The discovery that changed everything. Many embarrassing things are also in the palace. However, they get managed. A quiet word here, a carefully worded statement there. A story redirected before it gains enough momentum to cause lasting damage. The palace has been handling embarrassing things for centuries. It is very good at it. Dangerous things are different. Dangerous things do not get managed, they get removed. Quietly, completely. Without the kind of public announcement that would invite questions the institution does not want to answer. The removal happens and then the silence closes over it like water closing over a stone. What Princess Anne discovered in the early months of 2025 was not embarrassing. It was dangerous. And the consequences of that discovery have been unfolding. Unfolding quietly inside the palace ever since, in ways that the official version of events has not come close to capturing. To understand what Anne found, you have to first understand the environment she was moving through when she found it. Because context matters enormously here. The palace in early 2025 was not a calm place. It was an institution managing multiple simultaneous pressures with the focused intensity of an organization that understood failure was not an option. Charles was king, but his health was a constant and unspoken presence in every significant conversation. The cancer diagnosis confirmed in February 2024 had not disappeared. Treatment had continued through the latter part of that year and into 2025. Charles was performing his duties, he was appearing publicly, and was projecting the composure that the role demanded. But those inside the palace knew the reality behind the composure, and that reality was shaping everything. When a monarch's health is uncertain, the institution does not stand still. It prepares, it assesses. The institution makes quiet determinations about where authority actually sits, and where it will need to sit in the months and years ahead. People inside the palace were watching William. They were watching Catherine. They were calibrating their loyalties and their positions accordingly. Camilla's was also being watched, and Tom as well.
Now, the 12-course dinners have gone, the cream and the truffles and the foie gras we've seen.
Tom Parker Bowles has always occupied an unusual space inside royal life. He is not a working royal. He carries no official title beyond his connection to his mother. He has built his own public profile as a food writer and culinary personality with genuine talent and real credentials in that world. But his access to royal circles has always gone considerably beyond what his official position would suggest. That access was something Anne had noticed before 2025. It had registered with her as a background concern, something to observe rather than act on. Tom moved through certain spaces and certain conversations with a familiarity that warranted attention, until a specific point warranted intervention. That specific point arrived in February 2025. Anne was conducting what sources describe as a routine review of correspondence and documentation connected to a royal estate matter, the details of which estate and specific matter have not been fully disclosed. But what the review was not supposed to produce was any connection to Tom Parker Bowles. It produced one anyway. What Anne found has been described by sources in careful and deliberately vague terms. Nobody with direct knowledge of the discovery has been willing to put the full details on the record. But the picture that emerges from multiple partial accounts is consistent enough to form a clear shape. Tom had been involved in a series of communications and interactions. Communications connected to royal estate interests that went significantly beyond anything his unofficial status would have authorized. He had been accessing information, sharing it in directions it was not supposed to travel, and doing so through channels that were designed to be difficult to trace. Difficult, but not impossible. Anne found the thread, and when she pulled it, what unraveled was considerably more than a single inappropriate conversation or a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, sustained over a period of months, deliberate in its construction, and connected, sources suggest, to commercial interests that had no business being anywhere near the information Tom had allegedly been accessing. This is not a story about a man who made a careless mistake. It is not a story about someone who stumbled into territory he should have avoided because the boundaries were unclear. The boundaries were not unclear. They are never unclear inside the British royal family. The lines around what information can be accessed, by whom, and for what purpose are not suggestions. They are the structural foundation of an institution that has survived as long as it has, precisely because those lines are maintained with absolute consistency. Tom allegedly knew exactly where those lines were, and sources suggest he crossed them anyway. Why he crossed them is a question that leads directly into the heart of what was allegedly being planned. And the answer to that question connects to something larger than Tom's individual ambitions. It connects to a broader set of interests that Anne had already been watching with concern from a different angle entirely. But that connection, and everything it reveals, requires understanding Tom's situation more completely than most people outside the palace have ever been allowed to. Because Tom Parker Bowles is not simply a man who got too close to the fire. He is a man who allegedly believed the fire belonged to him, and Princess Anne was about to show him exactly how wrong that belief was. What Tom Parker Bowles was really doing. Tom Parker Bowles is good at appearances. That is not an insult. It is an observation about a man who has spent his entire adult life experiencing one of the most appearance-conscious environments on Earth. Growing up as the son of Camilla Parker Bowles meant growing up in the middle of a story that was never really about him. A story that was loud and relentless, and that followed his family through every public and private moment for decades. He learned early how to present himself, how to occupy space without drawing the wrong kind of attention, and how to be visible enough to be relevant and quiet enough to avoid becoming a target. It is a skill, a genuine one, and Tom refined it over years of practice. But skills developed in the service of survival can sometimes become skills deployed in the service of something else entirely. And by 2024, sources suggest Tom's considerable talent for managing appearances was being applied to a project that had very little to do with survival. It had to do with opportunity. To understand the opportunity Tom allegedly saw, you have to understand his position as it stood going into 2024. On the surface, the picture looked reasonable. His mother was queen consort. His stepfather was king. The family that had spent decades as the monarchy's most controversial subplot had arrived. Improbably and completely, at the center of the institution. Tom had benefited from that arrival in visible ways. His public profile had grown, and his access to certain events and circles had expanded. The cloud that had followed the Parker Bowles name through the worst years of the Charles and Diana controversy had not disappeared entirely, but it had thinned considerably. By most measures, Tom Parker Bowles was doing well, but well was apparently not the destination he had in mind. Sources who were operating inside royal-adjacent circles during 2024 described Tom as someone who was increasingly focused on a specific and ambitious vision for his own future, a vision that centered on the royal estates, on the commercial potential he believed existed within them, on the possibility of positioning himself as a bridge between the monarchy's heritage assets and the kind of high-end commercial ventures. High ventures that could generate significant revenue and a significant personal profile simultaneously.
That tastes like British Airways coffee. That is not a compliment. That's really dull. It's not the best.
He had been developing this vision quietly for some time. The food and culinary world had given him credibility and a platform. His writing career had established him as a genuine authority on British food culture and country life. Those credentials were real. Nobody disputes them. But Tom allegedly saw them as something more than credentials. He saw them as a key that could unlock access to royal estate resources, royal heritage branding, and royal-adjacent commercial opportunities. That would have been entirely unavailable to someone without his specific combination of family connection and public profile. The plan, as sources piece it together, was not constructed overnight. It developed gradually through 2023 and accelerated significantly through 2024. At its core was straightforward commercial logic. The royal estates represented an extraordinary concentration of heritage value, agricultural assets, natural beauty, and historical significance. That value was, in Tom's alleged assessment, significantly underleveraged from a commercial perspective. He intended to change that. The specific ventures he was developing have been described in partial detail by sources. A premium food and hospitality brand built around royal estate produce. Exclusive access experiences for high-net-worth individuals connected to royal heritage properties. Licensing arrangements that would allow the Parker Bowles name. They are now inseparable in public perception from the royal family itself. to serve as a commercial endorsement for carefully selected luxury products and experiences. On paper, some of these ideas were not entirely without merit. That is what made the situation complicated. Because the line between a legitimate commercial venture that draws on one's family connections and an operation that inappropriately exploits access to privileged institutional information is not always visible from the outside. From the inside the palace, the legal and constitutional framework that governs how royal assets and royal information are managed, that line is extremely clear. Tom allegedly crossed it. The specific nature of the crossing involves information. Sources are consistent on this point, even when they are vague on the details. Tom had allegedly been accessing, and in some cases sharing information about royal estate assets, their valuations, commercial potential, and their legal status, with external parties who had no authorized connection to that information. Those external parties were not casual acquaintances. They were commercial partners, investors, individuals with direct financial interest in the ventures Tom was allegedly constructing. People for whom the information Tom was allegedly providing represented genuine commercial value. The flow of that information had been designed to be invisible, conducted through informal channels, framed as casual conversation rather than formal disclosure, structured in ways that made each individual exchange look like nothing more than a man talking loosely about his family's world to people he knew socially. But patterns are visible even when individual instances are not. And Anne had found the pattern. What made Anne's discovery particularly significant was not just what Tom had allegedly been doing. It was who else allegedly knew about it, because Tom did not allegedly operate in complete isolation. Sources suggest that certain individuals within the palace's extended orbit were aware of Tom's ventures. They knew he was developing commercial ventures connected to royal estate interests. Some of them had been asked questions. Some of them had provided information in good faith, not understanding the full context of why they were being asked. When Anne began tracing the pattern backward, those individuals became part of the picture. The picture that emerged was not of a lone operator pursuing a private ambition in complete secrecy. It was of a network, small, carefully managed, but a network nonetheless, and networks inside the palace are treated with a seriousness that isolated individuals are not. Because a network implies organization, it implies planning, and it implies a level of deliberate and sustained intent that cannot be explained away as carelessness or naivety. Tom Parker Bowles is not a naive man. Everyone who has spent time in his company confirms that. He is intelligent, socially skilled, and entirely aware of how the world he moves through operates, which means that what Anne found could not be attributed to ignorance. It had to be attributed to choice, and that attribution changed everything about how the palace would respond. Anne had the pattern. She had the connections. She had enough of the picture to take it forward. The question was where to take it and how fast to move. Anne is not a woman who moves without certainty. But when she has certainty, she moves without hesitation. She had certainty now. And what happened next inside the palace was swift enough to leave almost no time for anyone to prepare a defense, including Tom. Anne moves and the palace responds. Anne did not hesitate. That is the detail that sources consistently emphasize when describing what happened after she assembled the full picture of what Tom had allegedly been doing. There was no period of extended deliberation, no weeks of weighing options and consulting advisors and measuring the personal cost of intervention against the institutional necessity of it. Anne looked at what she had found. She understood what it meant and moved. The first person she went to was not Charles. That decision alone tells you something significant about how Anne read the situation. Charles was the king. He was Camilla's husband. He was Tom's stepfather in every practical sense of the word. Taking the information directly to Charles first would have meant routing it through the one person whose emotional connection to the individuals involved was deepest and most complicated. Anne understood what would happen in that room if she walked into it with what she knew. Charles would listen. He would feel the weight of it. And then he would feel something else. The pull of loyalty, the instinct to protect, the desire to find an interpretation of the evidence that was less damaging than the one Anne was presenting. Anne had seen that dynamic operate before. She knew its shape and its cost, so she went to William first. The meeting between Anne and William in February 2025 has been described by those with knowledge of it as one of the most direct and unambiguous conversations, one to take place inside palace walls in recent memory. Anne presented what she had found without editorial embellishment. No dramatic framing or emotional emphasis. Just the pattern laid out clearly, with the connections identified and the implications stated plainly. The royal estates represented an extraordinary concentration of heritage value, agricultural assets, natural beauty, and historical significance. William listened without interrupting. When Anne finished, there was a silence that sources describe as brief but complete. The kind of silence that happens when someone has just been handed information that confirms something they had already suspected but had not yet been able to prove. William had been watching Tom for some time, not with the focused investigative attention that Anne had brought to the question, but with the background awareness of a man who pays close attention to everyone moving through the spaces he considers his responsibility. Tom had registered as a concern. Now he was a confirmed problem. The question was how to handle it, and this is where William's instincts and Anne's instincts aligned completely. Neither of them wanted noise. None of them wanted a public confrontation that would force Camilla into an impossible position and hand the press a story that would dominate the royal narrative for months. What they wanted was resolution, clean, quiet, total. They also needed to go to Charles. That conversation happened within 48 hours of Anne's meeting with William. Sources describe it as one of the more painful moments in a royal year that had already contained more than its share of painful moments. Charles sitting with his son and his sister, being shown the picture that neither of them wanted to be showing him. Being asked to look clearly at something involving his wife's son that every instinct he possessed wanted to look away from. Charles did not look away. Those who know him well describe a man who has, through years of personal and public difficulty, developed a capacity for absorbing unwelcome truth that is genuinely remarkable. He has had to. The alternative, the instinct to protect and deny and manage, had cost the institution and the people he loved too much across too many years for him to indulge it now. He looked at what Anne and William had brought him, and he made a decision. The decision was not announced. It was not documented in any official palace communication. It did not produce a press release, a statement, or any of the formal apparatus the institution uses when it wants the public to know something has been resolved. It produced a phone call. The details of that phone call have not been confirmed. Who made it and exactly what was said remain inside the circle of people directly involved. But its consequences were visible almost immediately to those paying close attention. Tom Parker Bowles began withdrawing, not dramatically, or with the kind of visible collapse that would attract immediate press attention. Quietly, gradually, the way a tide goes out rather than the way a wave crashes. Engagements that had been anticipated did not materialize. Conversations that had been ongoing went silent. The informal access to certain palace-adjacent circles that Tom had been cultivating with such deliberate patience began to close around him like doors swinging shut one by one. His commercial ventures, the ones that had been in various stages of development and discussion, lost momentum with a speed that sources describe as striking. Partners who had been engaged and enthusiastic became suddenly unavailable. Investors who had been interested stopped returning communications. The network that had been quietly assembling itself around Tom's royal-adjacent opportunities simply stopped functioning. Networks stop functioning when the information stops flowing. And the information stopped flowing the moment the palace closed the channels Tom had allegedly been using. Outside the palace, none of this was immediately visible. Tom continued to appear at public events. He continued to write. He continued to present the surface of a man whose life was proceeding normally. The appearance machine that he had spent years building was still running. But inside the circles that mattered, the message had been received and understood completely. Tom Parker Bowles was no longer a figure with meaningful access to royal estate interests or royal-adjacent commercial opportunities. He was out. The efficiency of it is, in a strange way, a proof to how seriously the palace took what Anne had found. Institutions move slowly when they are uncertain. They move quickly when they are not. The speed with which Tom's access evaporated tells you everything about the level of certainty that existed around what he had allegedly been doing. There was no ambiguity left to deliberate over. There was only one consequence. For Anne, the outcome represented exactly what she had intended. The problem had been identified. It had been taken to the right people through the right channels. And it had been resolved without the kind of public explosion that would have caused collateral damage far beyond Tom himself. Clean, quiet, complete. But clean outcomes inside the British royal family are rarely truly clean. because the people connected to the person who has been removed do not disappear when the removal happens. They remain in the same rooms, at the same tables, carrying the weight of what occurred in a very private and very real way that the official silence around the situation does nothing to relieve. Camilla remained, and what this entire situation meant for her position inside the palace was something that no quiet resolution could fully contain. That is exactly where we are going next, and the picture it reveals is more complicated than anything that has come before it. The fallout for Camilla and what comes next. There is a particular kind of difficulty that comes with being responsible for someone else's consequences. Camilla knows that difficulty well. She has lived with versions of it for most of her adult life. The consequences of choices made by people connected to her that landed on her shoulders regardless of her direct involvement. The public judgment that followed her family name into rooms she had not entered and conversations she had not started. She is practiced at absorbing that kind of weight. But what landed on Camilla in the wake of Tom's removal was different from anything she had passed through before. Because this time the consequences did not arrive from outside the palace. They arrived from inside it, from the institution she had spent decades trying to become part of, and the people she now shared a family name with. From William. Sources describe Camilla's response to the situation in the weeks following Tom's pushout as controlled on the surface, and considerably less controlled beneath it. She continued her public engagements. She appeared beside Charles at official events with the composure that years of royal life had made second nature. She gave nothing away to the cameras or to the press or to the casual observer. But inside the palace, the atmosphere around her had shifted, and Camilla felt every degree of that shift. The specific nature of what Tom had allegedly been doing had not been made public. No official statement had been issued, and no formal accusation had been leveled. The royal estates represented an extraordinary concentration of heritage value, agricultural assets, natural beauty, and historical significance. The palace's chosen instrument was silence, and that silence was total. But silence inside the British royal family is never neutral. It carries information. It tells the people who understand how the institution communicates exactly what has happened and exactly what it means. The silence around Tom's withdrawal was not the silence of nothing occurring. It was the silence of something having been resolved, and everyone inside those walls understood the difference. For Camilla, that understanding was a specific and personal burden. She knew what her son had allegedly been doing. Sources are not unanimous on exactly when she became aware of the full picture, or how much of it she had known while it was happening. Those are questions that remain genuinely unresolved in the accounts of people close to the situation. But she knew now, and knowing created a position that had no clean exit. She could not defend Tom publicly without drawing attention to a situation the palace had successfully kept contained. She could not distance herself from him publicly without appearing to confirm that something serious had occurred. She could not confront William directly about the consequences without reopening a conversation that had already reached its conclusion. She was caught in the specific trap that the palace's chosen silence had constructed around her. The institutional relationship between Camilla and William had never been straightforward. That is not a revelation. It has been the underlying tension in the monarchy's internal dynamic. Since William became old enough to fully understand the history that Camilla represented in his family's story, William has always been civil, publicly correct. He has never given the press a moment of visible hostility toward Camilla to work with. His public conduct toward her has been precisely what duty and dignity required. But civil is not warm, and correct is not close. The distance that has always existed between them did not close after Tom's removal. It widened. Sources describe a palpable shift in how Camilla was positioned inside certain palace conversations and planning processes in the months that followed. Not dramatic exclusion. Nothing that could be pointed to as a single definitive moment of sidelining. Just a gradual and consistent narrowing of the circle. Meetings she might previously have been included in proceeded without her. Discussions about estate matters and institutional planning that touched on her interests were resolved before they reached her. The informal influence that proximity to Charles had always provided was becoming, quietly and steadily, less reliable as a mechanism. Because Charles was less reliably at the center of those decisions, William was. And William's circle, the people he trusted, the advisors he consulted, the inner ring of individuals whose judgment he relied on, had never included Camilla, had never been designed to include her. That reality had always existed in theory, now it was existing in practice. For Camilla, the question of what her position inside the monarchy looks like going forward is one that the Tom situation has made significantly more urgent. The title plan that was allegedly being constructed was, at least in part, a response to exactly this vulnerability. An attempt to secure a formal position that did not depend on William's goodwill. That plan had been stopped. The vulnerability it was designed to address had not. Royal observers who have been watching Camilla's position closely through 2025 describe a woman who is going through a genuinely difficult reality, yet has the skill of someone who has been exploring difficult realities for a very long time. She has not collapsed or retreated entirely. She has not given the palace or the press the visible crisis that either might have expected given the pressure she is operating under. But the margin she is working within is narrower than it has ever been. Tom's situation removed something that cannot be restored by any public appearance or carefully managed palace statement. It removed the assumption of protection. Inside the monarchy, the assumption that the people closest to the crown are protected by that proximity is one of the institution's most powerful informal guarantees. It is what makes royal adjacency so valuable and so sought after. Tom had that protection. Then he allegedly misused what came with it. And the institution did what institutions do when the assumption of protection is violated. It withdrew, quietly, completely, and without any indication that the withdrawal was anything other than permanent. Where that leaves Camilla as Charles's reign continues under the shadow of his health is a question the palace has not answered and will not answer publicly. But the answer is already visible to anyone watching closely enough. And what William is building in the space that answer reveals is exactly where this story goes next. The monarchy that William is building. Step back from the specific details of what happened to Tom, and from the title plan that never materialized. Away from Anne's discovery, and the quiet network that was dismantled, and the atmosphere inside the palace that shifted in ways nobody has officially acknowledged. Step back from all of it and look at the shape underneath. Because there is a shape, a clear, consistent, and entirely deliberate one. And once you see it, every individual decision that William has made across the last 2 years stops looking like a series of responses to separate problems and starts looking like what it actually is. A construction project. William is building something. He has been building it methodically and without fanfare since the moment the Duchy of Cornwall passed to him in September 2022. Every decision he has made about who belongs inside his circle and who does not has been a brick in that construction. Every quiet removal, withdrawn document and conversation that ended a plan before it could become a fait accompli, all of it is load-bearing. The monarchy William is constructing has specific characteristics that are visible to anyone paying attention. It is smaller, tighter, built around a core of people whose loyalty to William and Catherine is direct, personal, and entirely independent of any connection to the previous generation. It has no room for inherited obligations he did not choose, and no room for commercial interests dressed in the clothing of royal heritage. It has absolutely no room for informal access networks that allegedly allowed someone like Tom Parker Bowles to move through palace-adjacent circles with a freedom that his official status did not remotely justify. William has watched what informal access produces. He grew up watching it, and he watched it shape his parents' marriage and damage his mother. He watched it ultimately contribute to the most sustained period of royal crisis in the modern era. Watched it operate through the Andrew situation with consequences that are still unfolding inside the palace and inside British courts. He is not going to watch it operate inside his reign. The people around him understand this. The message has been delivered not through speeches or statements, but through outcomes. Tom's removal is an outcome. Annabelle Elliott's departure from the duchy payroll is an outcome. The failed title plan is an outcome. Each one communicates the same thing in the same quiet and completely unmistakable language. This is William's institution now. His rules, people, and lines. Cross them and the response will not be dramatic. It will simply be final. For Anne, her role in what has unfolded over the last year represents something she has been quietly preparing for across an entire lifetime of royal service. She is not positioning herself as a political actor inside the palace. She is not building her own influence at anyone else's expense. She is protecting the institution. That has always been Anne's North Star, not the individuals inside the monarchy. Not the personal relationships, the family dynamics, or the complicated histories that make the Windsor family as human and as flawed as any other. The institution itself. When she saw something threatening it, she acted. When the threat was contained, she stepped back. No press conferences or carefully placed stories in sympathetic newspapers. No public credit was claimed for what she had done. Just the work, done quietly, completely. In the way that Anne has always done everything that matters. The monarchy is changing. It has been changing since September 2022. And the pace of that change is accelerating with every month that passes. The era being left behind is Charles's era, Camilla's era. The era of complicated histories and informal arrangements and the long shadow of decisions made decades ago. The era arriving belongs to William and Catherine, and the people who have not yet understood that fully are learning it now. One quiet removal at a time. Tom's access is gone, the title plan failed, and William's blueprint for the monarchy has never been clearer. Princess Anne made sure of that. If this story gave you something to think about, share this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more.